Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming. I couldn't resist being here because the reason I got involved with the American Sephardi Federation originally is this very topic. Before I continue, I want to make a qualification. I'm half Ashkenazi, half Sephardi. So if I say anything that sounds negative about the Ashkenazis, it's not meant. And we have had events like this at the Center for Jewish History, and it happened to me on more than one occasion that a lady comes up afterwards and says, "What's wrong with us Ashkenazis?" And I felt very bad. I mean, we didn't try to create that impression. Now, this is a lead-in to when I first became aware of that not only was I Jewish, but I had a Middle Eastern background. My father and mother, as you just heard, were mixed marriage, so to say. Even amongst us Jews, there are mixed marriages. And there was a typical East meets West event at our home. I was about 7, 8 years old. So, you know, that's the age when you love your mother more than your father. So I went to my mother and I asked her, I said, "Mommy, why did you marry Daddy?" And you know what she answered? This Viennese, elegant woman that went on the children's transports, that lived in Vienna, went to the opera when she was a little child and very cultured. She said, "One of the reasons I fell in love with your father was he represents the aristocracy of the Jews," meaning the Jews from the Middle East. And the fact that they probably lived, and I think that's probably true, was, as Bernard Lewis said, the Jews never had it as good as the Jews in the Middle East at one point, and never as bad as the Jews in Christian lands. But the fact was, we didn't live quite as bad a life. Although there's another movement amongst the Jews, not only Jews that don't want Israel to exist, that I find very upsetting, but there are also Jews that come from the Middle East that want us to go back to the Middle East, and that say, you know, we had such a wonderful life and everything was so perfect. And I mean, it's true. My family lives in London, most of them. They still have the same Iraqi Muslim friends in London that moved out at the same time as they did. But on the other hand, when my father was 16, he had a brawl with a Muslim teacher in his Jewish school. The Jewish schools had to have a Muslim teacher somewhere. And because of that brawl he had with the teacher, my grandfather was told that he had exactly 24 hours to get my father out of the country. So things were not that rosy. This is 1936. He was 16. So the next time I found out about Jews in the Middle East was another event with my mother. We were watching a performance at the Olympia hall in Paris, and there was Enrico Macias singing. And my mother leaned over to me and said, "You know, he's a Sephardic Jew. He comes from North Africa." That was the next time I found out about it. So this issue of the forgotten Jews, somehow I need to tie it a little bit to what's happening right now. It kills me to see Israel lose the PR war in this terrible war. And I have 3 daughters in their 20s, and they are out of college, but they are working, and they are being terrorized. They feel, they are afraid. And I can't believe that we can't get the message out. And when I think about it from my own career and what I did in my life, I'm very well aware of that the Jews invented PR. So what happened? And not only now in this circumstance, but if you go back in time, when all these Jews came from the Middle East and North Africa, what an amazing opportunity for Israel to really stress this, really talk about it, because it's probably one of the best weapons we have legitimizing the right of Israel to exist right where it is. I mean, many Jews came to Israel fleeing Arab countries by bus. That's how close it is. So it kills me that we are losing the current PR war and that Israel was not able to make more hay out of the fantastic story of the Jews from the Middle East. Some of you that may have been to an ASF event at the Center for Jewish History has probably heard one of my favorite jokes before, but you know, in the Sephardi community in Israel, when they speak about the Mossad proudly, you know, there's an elite unit in the Mossad is called Unit 2800. And do you know why it's 2800? 2 Ashkenazis and 800 Mizrahis. I like your smile. So, you know, when Israel was created and all that, I mean, the Jews that came from the Arab countries were vital to the Secret Service and are still today. And, you know, most of the characters in Fauda that I'm sure all of you have seen are Jews from the Middle East, North Africa. So I wanted to stand up here and tell you just one thing. You know, whenever you are with friends, Jewish, non-Jewish, whatever, take the opportunity and tell the story about these 850,000 Jews that had to leave their homelands, that they had occupied for over 2,500 years in most cases, leave all their belongings behind except one suitcase, and tell the story and say, you know, there were only 750,000 Palestinian refugees. I don't want to in any way denigrate that, but of the 750,000, a lot of them fled because the Arabs in 48 said, you have to get out because we are going to wipe this country clean. So not only did they leave because of the war, but they were asked to leave. So there were more Jews that left than Palestinians. That's a very simple fact. But what an incredible, strange situation that the Palestinians and their offsprings now in the 3rd and 4th generation just are still called refugees. We are not called refugees. I mean, our kids are not refugees. You know, my parents' grandkids are not refugees anymore. We have lost, I don't want to say we lost, we just went on with our lives. And if you look at the history of the world, all nations at some point in time had terrible catastrophes. People were wiped out, but there were other people that came and they built things from scratch. That's the cycle of life. And you can't just withdraw and live as refugees and think that that's sort of your mission in life to stress that. But, you know, for many of the, what should we call our enemies, it suits them fine to keep the Palestinian issue alive and well. So please don't forget to speak about this issue to people, educate your kids. I want to end on a happy note. One of my daughters works at Amazon in Los Angeles. She's only 25, and this is what's happening now is shaking her badly. And suddenly I get a phone call a week ago, and it's my daughter, and she said, "Dad, something terrible happened." I said, "What?" She said, "I just got on an office what do you call it, communication line in the office. I got a question, and it says, 'Louisa, are you related to René Dangoor?'" René Dangoor, an aunt of mine, became famous for various reasons in Baghdad in the early 1940s. And my daughter was convinced that if she would reveal to this person whom she had never heard of or seen before, that yes, she was a relative of René Dangoor, that would mean that she sort of declared herself from Iraq, declared herself Jewish. And she told me, "Dad, what should I do?" I told her, in my wisdom, "Don't answer." And that led to my daughter answering. And she wrote back and she said, "As a matter of fact, I am." And then she called me and she said, "Daddy," I answered, "Do you think something terrible will happen?" I said, "No, don't worry, it'll be all right." The next thing she knows, she gets a message back. "Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm a Shiite Muslim from Iraq. I want you to know that I'm thinking intensely of you, and if you need any help or you need anything, I'm there for you. My parents and grandparents always raved about the Jews in Iraq and how wonderful they were and what a great loss for the country. And I want you to know that I told my parents and they extend their warmest feelings for you and hope you'll be safe and all right. So, we left a lot of wonderful people behind also, not only that fled with us. So that's the stories I wanted to tell. Let's the program go on. Thank you.